The last 24 hours has seen developments that point to the end of Hamas's ability to continue fighting this war. The oxygen pipe of smuggled weapons and other supplies from Egypt into the southern Gaza has been completely cut off, dealing another hard blow to Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Meanwhile, the IDF's Commando Brigade has completed an operation to clear Hamas terrorists from a large UNRWA humanitarian compound which the terrorists were using as a base of operations. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Jacob Lew, says there's reason to believe that Mohammed Deif has been eliminated despite Hamas's denials, and on the northern front, the IDF has eliminated 4 Hezbollah operatives in the last day. In a related story, a Hezbollah operative was arrested in Germany for attempting to obtain components for the production of UAVs. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 284th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and all of its terrorist proxies in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. In the last 24 hours, the Commando Brigade wrapped up a 7-day operation to clear Hamas terrorists from an UNRWA compound in Gaza City between the neighborhoods of El Sabra and Tel Al-Hawa. Hamas had completely taken over the food distribution warehouse that UNRWA was supposed to be operating in this compound, and they had also used the facility to store weapons and ammunition, which is strictly forbidden by international law. Also discovered inside this UN facility was a Hamas recruitment office where young children are vetted, groomed, and trained to attack Israelis. But that wasn't the worst part. During the sweeps, the IDF troops also discovered a production line for drones and other weapons. Soldiers from the Maglan and Egoz units in the IDF explored the area, which is adjacent to the university, discovering several large and technically complex drones that Hamas fabricated in recent months. There were many other indications that this area has been repurposed to meet the military needs of Hamas since the IDF's withdrawal from Gaza earlier this year. This includes blocked roads, observation posts, and a forward command room for the management of the complex. IDF field commanders who led the operation to clear this compound also reported that the attacks Hamas tried to make against them included highly sophisticated ambushes involving the activation of charges synchronized with the firing of rocket launchers and the use of snipers and anti-tank squads. Clearly, these were not the loosely organized guerrilla bands the IDF has begun to encounter in other parts of the Gaza Strip, but rather highly trained and well-armed fighters who have been preparing for this battle for a very long time. Furthermore, it must be clearly understood that Hamas took over this UN facility, especially the food distribution warehouse, with the evil purpose of making the civilian population of Gaza dependent on Hamas, a terrorist organization, once more. They wanted civilians to be close to their stockpiles of weapons, ammunitions, and other military supplies so that these people would serve as human shields. In a related story, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Jacob Lew, gave a briefing to U.S. Jewish community leaders on Monday, in which he said that there are still many questions regarding the results of the attack against Mohammed Deif. I can't confirm whether it was successful or not, but there are indications that they have achieved it. To sum up, the war in the Gaza Strip is far from over, but there's reason to believe that hope is in the end of the tunnel. Hamas still has commanders of squads, divisions, and companies, but it operates in a different configuration now, using guerrilla tactics and operating less like a traditional army. This requires the IDF to adapt our tactics as well, to change and identify what are the disadvantages and advantages of this change in the enemy. Hamas is trying to fill the ranks with new recruits, often teenagers and even children. This requires the IDF to go back to areas that have previously been cleared in order to make sure that Hamas is not reorganizing itself in these areas. All of that having been said, the elimination of Mohammed Deif, when it will be confirmed, is a severe blow to Hamas. The person who was the chief of staff of Hamas and was the mastermind behind the terrorist organization's military activity in the Gaza Strip, has apparently been eliminated after 25 years of evil activity. But as Israel knows from bitter experience, eliminating senior officials is an important part of counter-terrorism operations, but that is not what eliminates a terrorist organization. Since the beginning of this war, there have been many voices saying that the image of victory over Hamas will be IDF and Israeli-controlled areas in the Gaza Strip, and it seems that Israel is beginning to internalize this. Documentation circulating today on the internet shows that the IDF has established in recent days an IDF post west of the Philadelphia corridor that serves as a facility for some of the forces operating in that area. We need your help to continue producing videos like this one that tell the truth about what is happening in Israel. So if you'd like to support us, please consider making a financial donation by clicking the donate button on YouTube or by going to our website at www.tbn.org/Israel. We would like to produce more investigative series which will be about the issue of terrorism and migration of terrorists to the West. Israel is fighting a war against terrorism today here in the Middle East, so that this war will not come to your doorsteps in the United States and in Europe. Therefore, it is important that you support us so that together we will reveal the truth and unite in prayer. Getting back into the news about the Gaza Strip, the IDF soldiers in the southern city of Rafah are enjoying high morale because they recognize that Hamas is exhausted, diluted, and non-functioning. This is true even though the conditions in Rafah are difficult, with the summer heat combined with thick dust from the movement of vehicles, which can make it difficult to see and breathe. But despite this, the IDF troops know that their enemy is near its end, and although there is still work to be done, victory in this campaign is drawing near. This is in large part due to the IDF's control of the Philadelphia corridor, which marks the border between Egypt and Gaza. It was through and under this border that most of the weapons, ammunition, and other supplies that Hamas used to wage its war against Israel was passed through. But now, the IDF has shut down this flow of supplies to Hamas, and they are slowly running out of everything they need to continue fighting. Since the IDF took the Philadelphia corridor, the rules of the game have changed. This is why Hamas has begun to show more flexibility in negotiations over the release of the Israeli hostages. Although I try not to talk too much about politics on this show, I must explain to you some of the things that we see happening behind the scenes. According to the sources of the defense establishment, Qatar has two levers of pressures on Hamas. The first lever is the economic lever, as the government of Qatar knows everything about the financial conduct of Hamas. Where does their money come from? What are their methods of raising money? Where do they transfer the funds from the bank accounts? And all the rest. According to intelligence assessment, the Qataris have the ability to shut down the financial management of Hamas and take away the personal financial resources of its leaders. The second lever Qatar has is the hosting of senior Hamas officials in Doha, Qatar's capital city. In recent months, senior Qatari government officials made it clear to senior Hamas officials who were sleeping in hotels in Doha that if they did not advance a deal with Israel for the release of the Israeli hostages and a ceasefire, they would be expelled. What did the Hamas people do in response? Hamas delegations went to Turkey to meet with President Erdogan and examine the possibility of moving to Ankara. Israel, the United States of America, and Qatar do not want such a move to come to fruition. Therefore, the Prime Minister of Qatar opened talks with the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The content of the talks between them is not clear, and it is not known if American pressure also came into play. But at the end of the day, Erdogan agreed to make it clear to Hamas officials that if they are expelled from Qatar, then Turkey will not take them in. This leaves Hamas with only a few other options, none of them very attractive. They include moving to Yemen or Lebanon, and possibly Iraq, although there were reports that they got the same treatment from the regime in Baghdad that they got from Erdogan in Turkey. It seems no one wants to see these guys around, not to mention that the hotels in Yemen and Lebanon are nowhere near the nice hotels that they live in Doha, Qatar. All of this is believed to have been a factor in the leadership of Hamas urging Sinwar to move forward with a deal, adding pressure on him that Israel also added by taking control of the Philadelphia corridor and otherwise keeping up the military pressure against Hamas terrorists. At the same time, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant instructed the IDF to increase the scope of military operations in the Gaza Strip. Every day, there are reports of dozens of terrorists being eliminated, more stocks of weapons and ammunition captured, and more tunnels and other bases of terrorism destroyed. Furthermore, the ability of Hamas to exert civil governments is also being degraded, setting the stage for an alternative governing structure when the war is finally over. Israeli intelligence estimates show that these operations are also increasing the anger of the civilian population of the Gaza Strip against Hamas and hopefully preparing them to accept an alternative civil administration. In addition to this, senior officials in the security system made it clear to the Qataris, the Americans, and the Egyptians that as long as there is no agreement to release the hostages, Israel will not give up operational opportunities to eliminate senior Hamas officials. We are at a crucial point of progress and with a very high chance that it will mature into an agreement between the parties with an American-Qatari bond. Please keep supporting the truth by sharing these videos on YouTube and subscribing to this YouTube channel. Take a minute and click the follow button and share the truth with anyone who wants to know what is happening in Israel in this conflict. Switching our focus to the northern arena, the El Mayadin Media Networks, which is affiliated with Hezbollah, reported attacks in the village of Kila and Beit Jabal in southern Lebanon over the last 24 hours. The Saudi Al Haddad channel separately reported that 3 people were neutralized in an airstrike in Bin Jbal, which tracks with an IDF statement that at least 3 Hezbollah operatives were eliminated by IDF airstrikes in southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, there were reports in Lebanon of an explosion at a gas storage facility in the north of the country near the border with Syria. Also, reports in foreign media portals say that 7 Syrian army soldiers and members of pro-Iranian militias were neutralized and wounded in an IDF attack on a military compound in Kfar Susa, one of the southern suburbs of Damascus. Yet another report in Syria included news of the termination of Bara Qatarji, a businessman closely associated with the regime of President Assad, along with a senior Hezbollah field operative who was with him when a missile hit a vehicle that they were traveling in near the Syrian-Lebanese border. In a related story, German police arrested a man on Sunday on charges that he was an operative for Hezbollah trying to acquire components for military drones so he can export them to Lebanon for use in attacks against Israelis. The prosecutors added that the man is suspected of having joined Hezbollah in the summer of 2016 and that he was caught in the town of Salzgitter in the district of Lower Saxony in Germany. Finally, the spokesman for the military wing of the Houthi rebel group in Yemen claims that they attacked a ship and an oil tanker in the Red Sea with missiles, unmanned aerial vehicles, and unmanned vessels. In addition, he claimed that the Houthis and pro-Iranian militias in Iraq attacked a ship in the Mediterranean. It is important to mention that this group often makes exaggerated claims about its accomplishments, but it is certainly firing weapons at civilian ships in international waters and has damaged several vessels over recent weeks. This is driving insurance costs and forcing many ships to divert their routes away from the Red Sea and around the tip of southern Africa instead. And this is greatly increasing costs for shipping companies. They are passing on those costs to customers like you and me, which is increasing the cost of living for everyone around the world. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on these developments, but this is very important that together we continue to spread the truth. And more than that, it's time to pray. Pray hard for the peace of the IDF soldiers that are fighting in the heat in the middle of the desert in the Gaza Strip. Pray for the peace of Israel, and most importantly, join us in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.